Hello and welcome. This series of videos are going to focus on online scam and fraud prevention. We're going to go over the hows, the whats, and the whys of all things scam related in the hopes to keep yourself safe when you're online. We're also going to talk about what to do if you have been a victim of scams, where to go for help, who to report it to, things like that. This is a big topic, so we're going to break it down into two different videos. The first video, part one, we're going to talk about who is targeted and why. We're going to talk about the impact of fraud in Canada. We're going to talk about what to do if you find yourself victimized and what you can do to help someone who may be getting scammed. In part two, we'll focus on recognizing signs of scams. We'll go over common scams and give some examples of what they may look like. We'll go over some general strategies to keep yourself safe when online and some resources that can help either yourself or others. So first off, it's important to know that scams target everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, your background, your income, everybody is susceptible to scams. Statistics show that in 2023, 50% of Canadians were exposed to some sort of a scam. The reason scams are successful is because they're hard to detect. They seem like a real thing. They play on emotions such as our fears and our worries, or on the other side of it, on our excitements. You get a text message that says you want money, that's an exciting thing. When someone contacts you and says that they're interested in a relationship with you, that gets you excited. There's a lot of psychology that goes into making these scams seem believable, and you can get convinced to put out information in a split second. Statistically, youth are scammed more often, while seniors are scammed out of more money. But when we talk about how prevalent scamming is this day and age, we shouldn't read too much into this and think, well, I'm not a senior or a youth, I'm not at risk. Everybody's at risk. So the statistics listed beside me are coming from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center and are from 2023. As you can see, there were 63,000 reported cases of fraud last year, and that reflects a loss of $567 million. The scariest statistics listed beside me is that only about 5% of fraud cases are actually reported. But if you take that and the financial loss into effect, the amount of money lost to fraud in Canada is in the billions. Now, you may feel that this online scamming and fraud seems to be on the rise. You get a lot more emails or text messages about it. It is becoming more and more of a problem in our daily lives, and there's a few reasons for this. First off, the internet creates a great place for criminals to exist. The internet can be anonymous and it reaches globally. If you think of a mugger who's coming after you to take your wallet, when you report this to the police, you know what the mugger looked like, you know what they sounded like, you know the area the crime was committed in. So the local police department has an easier time narrowing down where this criminal may be. Whereas on the internet, if someone's scamming you, you won't know where they're from. You won't know what language they speak. And the laws of the country they're scamming you from may be different than the laws that apply to your home country. So while the internet is a wonderful tool for us, it's a double-edged sword in that it's also appealing to criminals. Then you throw in the pandemic, and a lot of us turn to the internet for our work, to educate our children, to stay connected with our families. For a lot of us, being online that much was something new. It was complicated. We weren't ready to embrace technology that quick, but we had to. Criminals took advantage of this. Another reason for this, the amount of e-commerce and online shopping that we do now. There are a lot of ways to go online and spend your money, and unfortunately, not all of them are reputable. You really have to pay attention when purchasing things that you're purchasing from legitimate sites that are who they claim they are. The world of digital banking and how money is managed throughout the world, it's far too complicated for me to try to explain, but this has opened up vulnerabilities that cyber criminals are able to take advantage of. There's also big differences in the law from one country to the next. And because a criminal from another part of the world can target people in Canada, the laws of our land may not apply in their home country. And finally, technology is great for us, but it's also great for the criminals as well. And all the advancements that we enjoy, they can employ to their craft, such as cheaper disposable tech that they can abandon in a hurry, or the use of artificial intelligence, things like that. So when we combine all these factors, it creates that perfect storm for a significant rise in online criminal activity. At the time of filming this video, there is a popular news piece going around in the media, and it refers to a study that has been published by the United Nations, where this study looked at how some large organized crime criminal enterprises are funded. And before the pandemic, a lot of this revenue came from illegal casinos. When the pandemic hit and people weren't able to go to these casinos, the infrastructure changed to cybercrime. Once COVID restrictions were lifted, these organizations realized that there was a lot more money to be made from cybercrime than casinos. And now many of these casinos that were once geared towards gambling are now massive factories for online fraud. So how do these scams find their way into your life? Our mobile devices and our email account for about 80% of scam exposure, whether they're phone calls, text messages. These are the most common ways that scams find their way into our world. So if our phones are to blame for all of this, you may be thinking, well, how did the scammers get my phone number in the first place? Scammers use a variety of techniques to get your information. Everything from robo-dialers that will just dial every phone number known to existence, to things like data scraping, which is when a criminal will collect a large amount of data from either a website or from a device and use software to go through it to look for vital information, things like passwords or phone numbers. And then that information is then sold to people looking to use it. If you think of all of the things that you register for online, whether it's a website membership or an account for a game or an app that you've downloaded, maybe it's a free game you want to try and it asks for your phone number to start and you put it in without thinking. Well, the point of that app isn't to entertain you. The point of that app is to sell your phone number to somebody else. So you're going to hear this a lot through this presentation, in that we have to be very careful when we're putting information online and think about it before we do it. Why is it that this silly candy game needs my phone number? Along the same line, we post a lot of information on social media, often without realizing what we're doing. There was a news article about quizzes that were going around on Facebook and asking people to fill out these quizzes as a fun way to get to know the people on your Facebook friend list. And it turned out that the questions that were being asked were very similar to the security questions that Visa or MasterCard asks you when you have a credit card. So again, just be very careful with what you're putting online. Once you post it, it's there for life. So before I begin to talk on all the different types of scams that are out there, I want to talk about what to do if you've already experienced one of these. I fully admit that I've been caught up in scams myself. I teach people this stuff for years now. And weeks ago, I got caught on a Facebook scam. So I can fully appreciate the emotional toll and feelings that accompany getting caught up in these. You feel embarrassed, you feel guilty, you feel foolish, like, oh, I should have known better. All of these feelings take a toll on you. They suck the energy out of you, and the embarrassment makes you feel isolated and you don't really want to talk to people about it. What I want to impart to you today is just this understanding that the people scamming are not foolish. They're not just some criminal to be taken lightly. These are well educated people in things like psychology and human emotions. And they understand how to be convincing and how to play on your emotions and how to target people and get their money. There's billions of dollars at stake here. But at the root of it, they are a criminal and they're taking advantage of things. And as hard as it might be, the scam needs to be reported. And this is true for two reasons. Number one, it's a crime and police need to get involved and hopefully prevent this from affecting other people. But number two, and maybe more importantly, is that you need to get help to get the closure and to be able to move on and not let this affect your life. Here at Mind Forward, we have our psychosocial team who is very aware of the emotional impact that this type of behavior can have. And they create spaces where people can come together, share their experiences, learn and grow from them. You may feel more comfortable talking to a family member or speaking to a case manager. There are a variety of treatment options available to you, especially if you're finding that these negative feelings aren't going away. With time, some of these negative emotions should just naturally fade, but if they're not, it is important to seek out other treatment options because the end goal of all of this is forgiveness. You have to be able to forgive yourself and move on. Being caught in a scam is a mistake. And as human beings, we all make mistakes. Making a mistake does not define who you are as a person. We all make mistakes, and we can all forgive ourselves for making a mistake. And as I mentioned earlier, we do want to report these things, whether the fraud was successful or it was just an attempt. It's important to report it to the police, to Canada Anti-Fraud. Reporting is not just for your sake, but it's also a preventative measure that will hopefully keep others from getting scammed. So maybe the situation is different in that you suspect someone or know of someone who is getting taken advantage of and you want to help them. Some warning signs are things like changes in personality. Maybe someone is more withdrawn than they typically are. They're spending much more time corresponding with people through email. They're up late at night text messaging people, and that's not typically what they do. Or they seem to have less access to money or funds are more tight than they typically are. It can be a difficult topic to bring up. And if it turns out that the person is getting scammed, it can also be very difficult to keep your judgment out of the conversation. But by far the most important thing you can do to support someone through this is to be supportive. The person who's being victimized already feels guilt and shame, and they don't need someone piling on top of that. You want to remind them that these scam artists are professionals and it's okay to make a mistake. This can be difficult if the person doesn't realize they're getting scammed or they're in denial that what they're experiencing is some sort of fraud. As their support, you want to be patient, and there are people that you can seek out for professional assistance in this. Canada Anti-Fraud will talk to you as a concerned party as opposed to the victim. So ideally, what we want is for the victim to reestablish power. We want them to feel in control. And one of the ways that this process starts is by cutting off all contact with the person who's scamming them. Now, this will be hard because, like I've said, these scammers are masters with their deceptive tricks and techniques to keep people on the hook, as it was. And often just ignoring them is not enough. You have to actively block communication with them. And depending how this communication is happening, you may have to help block email addresses, unfriend people, remove profiles, change passwords, block telephone numbers, things like that. But through providing that emotional support and reestablishing that empowerment for the victim, this will strengthen commitment and maintain cooperation from the victim in ending things. Now, because most scams are after financial gain, we want to block the possibility of any future outgoing payments. So if the scammer's already been sent money, they may have banking account information. We want to connect with our bank, change bank account numbers, change PIN numbers, put blocks on any future payments going out. All financial institutions have anti-fraud departments, and in some cases, there is the potential for fund recovery. It's also good that they're involved when and if things end up going to the police. Depending on the particulars of the scam, there may be passwords that need to be changed for different apps or different accounts. Get the information from the person being victimized and work on changing access to anything with a password on it. There's a type of scam called the tech support scam, which I'll go over in the second video, where a scammer will have someone download a file or a software onto a computer that allows them access to anything on their computers. This is a common thing that scammers will want their victim to do for them. If the person reports that they've downloaded files or programs on the scammer's request, you may want to have a professional look at the computer and see what's been installed. There are anti-malware programs that can detect some of this activity. They are a great starting point, but depending on what's been installed and how long this has been going on for, you may need a tech savvy person to give the computer a once over. Another way to help people is to gather as much evidence as you can about the scam. This can be emails that have been sent, any communication, whether it's text messages, take screenshots of it. If it's been happening over the phone, if you can get phone numbers, dates and times when phone calls happened. If there's been money sent back and forth, there's usually reference numbers for money transfers. Start gathering up as much information as you can. The more information you can gather, the more you'll have to provide to the authorities. And reporting is the next step. You want to reach out to local police departments or Canada Anti-Fraud. If you want to go with your local police department, you can walk into any police station to report this. With Canada Anti-Fraud, there is an 800 number where you can report it. There is an online portal for reporting to Canada Anti-Fraud, but from personal experience, I find it very difficult to use. It is much better to call them. And unfortunately, they do get quite busy and you may be on hold for a while, but it is worth your time to stay on hold with them until they pick up. Finally, the last thing, and I know I'm kind of blocking some of the words, so I will move back and forth so you can read them, but often when someone has been targeted for a scam and it's been successful, this information is shared within the scamming community, and the email address or the phone number is identified as a good one that scammers have been successful with. The likelihood of someone being targeted by a scam again is much higher than that of the population in general. If you have been supporting someone who has been targeted, be aware of this, be vigilant of their online activities, keep that dialogue open as best as you can, and take whatever steps you can to prevent further episodes. Or anything related to finances, go through your financial institution. If you bank with Scotiabank or TD, on the back of your bank card, their 1-800 number will be there to report scams. You want to call that number. Don't call a number you found off the internet. Go with the one on the back of your bank card. And that's the same for your credit card as well. Visa, MasterCard, the reporting number is right on the back of the card. That's the one you want to be calling. If you get a lot of spam emails or spam text messages, you want to block those numbers. And when you do that on a lot of phones now, it gives you the option right on the screen to report the number as spam. You want to be doing that if given the option. If not, and you get a lot of similar sounding messages, you want to report that to the Spam Reporting Center. And they have a website which you can fill out with the details, the numbers, the types of messages you've seen, and they actively go after these accounts and shut them down. Any type of fraud or theft, whether it's online or in person, you do want to report to the police. In Mind Forward, Halton and Peel, their reporting numbers are both above me. These are the direct lines to their cyber crimes divisions. As I mentioned, though, you can also walk into any police station and report this stuff as well. Finally, if you feel like your computer or your phone is infected with malware, malware are those pop-ups that come up saying things like your phone is full of viruses or suspicious activities detected, call this number or click here. I'm going to give a lot of examples in the next video showing you what these look like. But if you do feel that malware is one of your problems, you'll want to download a piece of anti-malware software. You can get them for free on Apple devices or Google devices. AVG and Avast are two free, really good pieces of software. We're going to go over a lot of that again in the next video. If this proves to be a little too complicated, there are members of our Mind Forward team that you can speak to. It's behind my head right now, that can help you remove malware from your device as well. So that's it for part one. In part two, we're going to go over specific scams, what they look like, and the things you can do to avoid online fraud. As always, thanks for joining, and we'll see you in the next one.